Today we're going to take a single 2x12x8 and we're going to make it into a nice little side table, and we're going to do it in the middle of a Utah desert. There you go, man. About 18.5 inches.
So you're going to cut your tape measure?
No, I'm not. I'm just measuring with it. See how cool of a look that gives it? Man, this glue is like already drying. That's how dry this air is. Alrighty guys, we're going to be building this table out of a 2x12x8. So the perks of working on the road and not having a shop, check out that view. Absolutely beautiful. All right, so when I start working with construction lumber, what I like to do is make it a rustic piece. So basically what I'm gonna try to do is make this like a reclaimed looking piece of wood. So how I'm gonna start off is just like on my nightstand video, I've got a Sawzall with a saw blade, and I'm just gonna run it backwards across this to make saw blade marks. When I'm doing it, I like to hit it from a couple different angles just to cover the whole face of it, especially this being a 12 or a 2x12. It's a pretty big face to cover, so I like to make sure I'm making marks on the whole surface. You can also play with ways on how you want to do it, how much pressure you put down. Obviously, how much pressure you put down, the deeper the saw blade marks are going to be. The speed that you move the Sawzall, that's going to depend on how spaced out the Sawzall marks are. So I like to kind of do a little bit of everything. That's just what I've had the best luck with. You can do different angles of the saw blade. There's really no right or wrong way to do it. Just kind of do it how you want to. Alrighty guys, next step, I'm gonna get the kids involved here. Basically what we're trying to do is make this an aged piece of wood. So what better tool is there than a kid when it comes to aging things? You've aged me in like 10 years and you're only 4 years old, you know that? Alright, so what I want you to do, dude, is do whatever you can to this and just have fun with it. Jump on it. You can flip it over. Take rocks and throw them at it, and then I'm going to get you a hammer too, all right?
And then hammer it?
Yeah, you can hammer it, but look at, take all these rocks, like that, and then you might want to get shoes on. You can just walk across it. Seems like fun, right? There you go, man. Alright guys, there's really no right or wrong way to do this either. That is why I'm letting my 2- and 4-year-old do whatever they want with it. Basically all we're trying to do is just distress the wood a little bit. I've said before, when I'm working with construction lumber, I like to basically defect it and make it look like a reclaimed piece of wood. So that is all we're doing here. You can use a hammer, a chain, a gravel driveway as we're using here. There's just a number of things you can do. So what you want to do is get a bunch of this dirt and just rub it in to the saw blade marks. And that will, see how cool of a look that gives it?
Yeah.
Alright guys, what I want to do next is cut the pieces for the top out of this.
We don't want the crack in the top.
We don't want this crack. That's the problem. So there's a crack at the end of this board that I do not want in the top. So what I want to do is cut the top pieces out of the middle. So there's no chance there's going to be check marks through the top. The base is going to be around 24 inches tall. So if I cut a 24-inch length off of this, the base is going to be ripped down an 1.5 inch slices. So I'll be able to miss this crack. So let's cut a 2-foot piece first, man. Alrighty guys, so now what that gives me is a nice fresh cut here with no cracks. And this, now I'm going to start to proceed and cut my top. It's going to be an 18-inch round tabletop. So what I'm going to do is cut 2 pieces at a little over 18 inches, about 18.5 inches.
So you're going to cut your tape measure?
No, I'm not. I'm just measuring with it. So actually, I'll cut them at about 19 inches. 2 of them at 19 inches. Alrighty guys, next up I'm over here at the table saw, and I got the pieces for the top here. So like I said, I want an 18-inch round table. I cut these to 19 inches, and then width-wise, it's a 2x12. So the actual width is 11 1/4. So what I'm gonna do right now is I have the fence set to 11 inches because I'm gonna cut off this rounded edge and square it up. Also, another thing is before you do this, I already did this, but take a speed square and just make sure that your blade is perfectly 90 degrees to your table. That is extremely important because we're not jointing these. Obviously, I don't have a jointer out here. Dimensional lumber is planed and jointed, but you know how that goes. Things happen with this construction lumber, so you want to just be very precise in making the straightest cut as you possibly can. And so just make sure that's squared up. All right, now what I'm gonna do is set the fence to 5 inches. Then I'm gonna cut 2 of them at 5 inches out of each of those pieces, which is gonna give me 4 total at 5 inches. Also, it's extremely windy out here. I bought a new mic, so hopefully this is better with the wind and everything. But anyway, set your fence to 5 inches. I'm gonna cut 2 of them at 5 inches out of each of those. Glue those 4 together, which is gonna give me 4 glued up, 5 inches each, 20 inches. So then when I go to cut it all out, it's gonna be an 18-inch round circle. I'll have a little extra when cutting out. And when you do this part you just squared up and made the cut, that's gonna go against the fence. Alrighty guys, now with these 4 pieces, I am gonna lay them out and glue them up. One thing I'm gonna do and keep in mind is this 2x12 had a very slight cup in it. It's very common with wider boards like this, basically to be like that. It wasn't that extreme, it was pretty gradual and subtle, but even with that being, what I'm gonna do is stagger it. So I'm gonna alternate the grain when I glue it up. Alrighty, I got it laid out how I like it, and as you can see, I just alternated the grain. This is curving that way, this is curving this way, and you just alternate it, each one. And what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna glue on the bottom. Basically, when I did these saw marks and I beat the crap out of it with the gravel and let the kids do what they did out of it, it created a lot of little indents. So I don't want a lot of squeeze out through that. So I'm gonna try to keep a majority of my glue on the bottom. Man, this glue is like already drying. That's how dry this air is. That is absolutely crazy. I have never seen glue dry so quick. Doesn't help, it's 90 degrees out and really dry air. So I better move a little quicker here. Okay, we still had a little bit of squeeze out, but should be all right. Alrighty guys, with the top all set, glued up, clamped up, we're going to turn our attention to the base. So out of what I cut, I've got a 24-inch piece here that I am gonna start ripping pieces down for the base. Now the base is gonna be 1.5 by 1.5 inches. That just makes it easy with construction lumber because you're already at 1.5 inches this way. So just like when I started the top, I ripped off that rounded edge, that is what we're gonna do now. So I'm gonna rip this down to 11 inches. Okay, so now I got a nice squared end. So now I'm just gonna switch my fence to 1.5 inches, right at 1.5 inches, and I am gonna rip as many as I can out of this. I'm pretty sure it'll end up being 6 lengths, which will be enough to build the whole base. So it's actually gonna be less than a 2x12 by 8. All right, so I actually got 7 pieces out of that, so that'll definitely be enough to build the base. All right, now at this point, we're gonna start cutting these into the lengths that they need to be. By ripping them down, there's gonna be some clean edges that there's gonna be no character when I let my kids basically distress these. So at this point, now would be the time to distress them too before you cut them to their final lengths. Because once they're cut to their final lengths and you distress them, they can, you know, damage the edges, which is gonna make your glue joints not look the best. So now's the time to do that before you start cutting. The base is going to be cut at a 6-degree angle. So we are gonna angle this to 6 degrees. I'm gonna leave the cut lengths in the description, but these are some angled cuts. As I said in the beginning, I do have plans available on my website, and that's like that'll show you like the full model of it. So it's a lot more specific, and it's a lot easier to show you visually than actually putting it in words in the descriptions. It's a lot easier to see a model of it. So if you're interested, they're in the description. So I'm gonna go ahead and cut them now, and then we'll show you how we put it together. Alrighty guys, as with basically most of my joinery on the road, it's been pocket hole joinery. It's easy, it's strong, and if you can hide it and conceal it, you really can't beat it. So that is what we're gonna go with here. The 4 longer upright pieces that we cut first, those are gonna get no pocket holes in them. So all these middle pieces that connect to those is what's gonna have the pocket holes. So I marked where they're gonna go. I'm gonna go through and drill them. Pocket holes in. All right guys, here I'm just gonna start putting the base together, and I'm getting pretty low on 2.5-inch Craig screws, but I think we got just enough to do it. I am going to be using a little bit of glue on these joints as well. Now, when using only one Craig screw, your joint's gonna tend to pivot because obviously there's not 2 holding it. So just make sure before the glue dries to straighten it out. And once the glue dries, it'll be enough to hold it. And then plus, once all the whole base is together, it'll be completely fine. But you just wanna make sure while the glue's still wet, to straighten it out. Okay, well now those together, what we gotta do is basically put these subcomponents together too. So we're gonna center these into there. That's gonna make up the base. To do that, I'm just gonna measure quick. Then I'm just gonna mark it with a pencil so I know right where to put it after I glue it. Another little trick for pocket hole joinery I like to do is tighten this in a tiny bit just until you see the tip of the screw coming out. And then after you glue it, that'll kind of dig in, especially on softwood, and hold it in place so it's not slipping around on you. Then you just pop that in those spots. Here we go. And then on this side, all you gotta do is just use your speed square to mark exactly where it goes, because you can use the other ones as a reference. Okay, there's our little base. All right guys, switching back to the top, we are gonna get this cut down. Now at this point, you can cut this and leave it into a square like it is and mount it to that same base, it doesn't matter. For what I want, I'm gonna cut it into a circle. So I'm gonna reference from the bottom, and I want an 18-inch circle. So what I'm gonna do is basically make a little protractor out of this. So I'm gonna screw this little screw into here just until it's protruding out, and put that right on that cross section and screw it in a little bit. Not all the way, just a little bit. Just enough so it'll pivot on it. Next up, marking 9 inches because I want an 18-inch circle. Then all I'm gonna do here is drill a little hole for a Sharpie marker or a pen or whatever you got to follow that around and make your mark. Okay. Now all you're gonna wanna do, hold your marker or whatever you got as straight as possible and make your mark. You caught on some blue marks there. Unscrew it. There's your cut line. So what I'm gonna do is just cut around this line. I got it set up on a 5-gallon bucket so I don't have to, I'm not worried about sawing into a table. So that'll allow me to go all the way around it without having to move it. Then I'll just clean that up with a sander. And that'll look pretty good. All right, before we really finish sand this, I am just gonna roll this around very gently in the gravel, just so the edges match the top a little bit. So as far as sanding goes, I just hand sand it at 220. You can use a random orbital sander, but the M18 battery one I have is a little too bulky, and I just found it a lot easier just to hand sand it. Plus I hand sand, like I said, with 220 grit. It doesn't need much sanding. I want to keep the character there, and 220 grit's the perfect grit to do just that. Keep the character there, but smooth it out enough where it will take stain much better and be smooth to the touch. As far as the top goes, I threw a lighter coated stain on there. This specific one is called Ipswich Pine, I believe. First time I ever used it, I just kind of wanted a lighter, natural looking top, and this did just that. All right, so I think that's not too bad. Once we put a clear coat on it, it's a decent color. I'm gonna put a coat of this green paint on the base. We painted our kitchen cabinets in our camper this color, and I really like it. And I think it'll contrast really good with the natural top once we put it all together. But the reason I'm gonna leave this distressed, I'm gonna put the coat of paint over the distress marks, and then tomorrow when the paint's dry, we've got another step we're gonna do to this that I've done before on furniture, but I've never showed it on video, so we're gonna go that route. So I'm gonna throw a quick coat of paint on this. Basically gonna be like a rustic antique look. It's gonna be nice, I think. Alrighty guys, we are on the tail end of this build. The paint's dry, the stain's dry. Before I put the final finish on, I'm gonna go through and kinda around the edges, just kind of give it a little more distress just to lighten it up to take away from the stain. Then we're gonna put finish on this, and then we're gonna go about how I'm gonna go about finishing the top here, or the base here. But for this, I'm just taking 120 grit and just gonna lightly go around the outside, just to kind of give it that aged patina, kind of make it look naturally worn. And then I'll even get around the edges a little bit. Also, by doing this, it's giving it a brighter color, but it's keeping the saw marks and the imperfections darker, which is the look I like. Alrighty guys, for sealing the top, I'm staying pretty simple here. It's just like a $6 can of 2x Ultra Cover. It's clear satin, just by Rust-Oleum. There is much better finishes than this. I would typically use like maybe a Danish oil or a tung oil here. In my scenario, we're heading out of here today. I want this as dry as possible, as quick as possible. And that's what this will do. So use what you'd like on it. like I said, there's much better options, but I'm just gonna put a couple coats on the bottom, flip it over, and put some 2 or 3 coats on the top. And actually, in this sun and dry heat, it is literally drying almost as quick as I put it on. All right, so for the base, my base is a distressed base as well. Obviously, at the beginning of the video, when I let the kids destroy the whole piece of wood, the whole thing was distressed. Going back, another way you could do it is, if you like the distressed top look, cut the pieces for the top, distress them, and keep the pieces for the base clean and smooth. Then you could paint the clean and smooth part, and you could fill any of the knot holes if you wanted to. And then you got a nice clean looking base that'll contrast well with the top. So that's another way to go. If you did that route, this would be pretty much good to go. You could throw another coat of paint on it and you'd be all set. Since mine's distressed, I'm gonna take it a step further. There's a lot of different steps you can do here, but as far as I'm concerned, I am just gonna take this, brush it up and down, and as you can see, you know, go over the parts where it would naturally wear. Then you're giving it that antique look that turns out really cool, and it just kind of matches the aged look here. And then another thing you could also do over this rough part is you could give it a little sand there, just a little bit, and see how, I don't know if you can see it on there, it's just so dang bright out here. You can see how it kind of shows through, and it's just really, really cool. I think so. So I'm gonna go through and kind of do little parts like that. So one last step, guys. Let me show you too, man. So you see how I painted this?
Yeah.
All right. Then I took sandpaper and I distressed the edges. See how it's back down to raw wood like this? So what you want to do is where that raw wood is, just seal it up. So this is the same stuff I used on the top. We're just going to lightly spray it right over the paint, right over that raw wood you concealed, or you exposed. And we're going to seal it up. So just a light coat of this all over the base, and then we're good to go, man. We've got ourselves a table back there.
Yeah, but isn't this already...
This is good. This is all sealed up.
Oh, it's already dry?
Yep, it dries very quick out here in this desert, dude. No waiting in that humidity like we used to. Remember that? No, dude. It's dry, honey. We're going to spray it right now. That's going to look really nice. See how it slightly darkens that exposed wood? It's going to tie it in with the top very nicely. Alrighty, guys. Final step is just to attach your base to your top. Oh, here it is. Here we go. Then all I got here is just regular 2.5-inch drywall screws. For a table this size, I'm not really going to worry about expansion and contraction. It's pretty small and it really shouldn't be an issue, but if you are, you can just bore out these holes a little bigger and then maybe put a washer on here just to allow for some movement, but I really don't think it'll be an issue. So we're just going to screw it down right to it. And that's done, man. Got the screw on, man. No, now we're good, man. There you have it, guys. A simple table build with one 2x12 by 8. Not even using the whole thing. I actually really ended up liking the de-stressed top as well as distressing the bottom and kind of giving it an antique look by sandpapering the edges, and I think it all tied together really nicely. But I got to get it out of Utah. It is getting hot here. So we're heading to Colorado. I'll catch you guys in the next video.